Good morning, everyone. Morning. Seems strange not to see something up here on the screen, but we do not have a PowerPoint this morning, which I apologize for myself. And we are going to be continuing our study through the book of Exodus, and we're going to be talking about some of the things that are dividing our country today in today's world. And we are going to be talking about some divisive things this morning. And please, whatever side of the fence you're on, I beg you, please just hang with me. I'm going to try to bring us back together before the end of our study this morning. And hopefully we'll meet back as God wants us to as Christians. But our country is divided. And we need to discuss some things this morning. We need to put some things out before us and talk about some things. So with that, I want to just put some things out there, not to hurt anyone's feelings, not to set anyone off, but just to lay some things out so that we all understand what's going on in our world today. With that, please excuse me as I'm dealing with some allergy issues. I've got a cough drop in my mouth at the moment, and my throat is scratchy. To begin with, you know that David mentioned a few weeks ago that he couldn't recall our nation being divided as it is right now at any point in his lifetime. When you look around, there's a couple of issues that really stand out to me right now. You've got the Black Lives Matter issue going on, and it continues as we see Louisville has recently continued to have the protest, the bridges blocked, and different things. But we also know of the COVID-19 issues. Just this morning, I read of a tweet that, let me see if I pronounce her name correctly, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted on May the 20th of this year. And this tweet she posted says, her words, "It's vital that governors maintain restrictions on businesses until after the November elections because economic recovery will help Trump be reelected. A few business closures or job losses is a small price to pay to be free from his presidency. Hashtag keep us closed." All right? We know that we're not enjoying these masks. State of Kentucky, the governor's mandated that we wear masks as we enter buildings and stuff. Elaine and I were out last night. Some of the places that we went into, they required the mask. Other places, they recommended the mask. But one thing that's upsetting to me, I'm seeing numbers from the Ukraine. As you all know, been there, I deal with it directly. The Ukraine itself, millions of people stacked right on top of each other. Stacked high, they're skyscrapers, more or less. Public transportation, very few of the people have individual vehicles to drive, so they're public transportation, handling it all day long. Healthcare system, not very good. One of the worst in the world for the outlying areas. The people don't live spread out like we do. I saw some of the numbers this week for their COVID cases. You know how it compares to the state of Kentucky? For the country, about 300 more cases than the state of Kentucky. Now we know that that the Colvoid cases have been skewed in the United States. It's been proven over and over. So we know that this is one of the cases of division in the United States at this point in time. But in the sense of the word, America has always been a divided country. Now I want to take you back, if you would, please allow me this. Before our nation was established, the British Loyalists versus the American Patriots. As we became a nation and became established, the cavalry and the civilian explorers versus the American Indians. Or they weren't American Indians, but they were the Indians at that point in time. Later on came the Civil War, the war between the states, the Union versus the Confederacy, the North versus the South, brother against brother. After the Civil War, the Democrats and the Ku Klux Klan versus the Republicans and the former slaves. In the 1930s and 40s, industrialists versus the unions. And right now it seems that many are wanting us to drag us right back into what I remember the division of the 1960s and 70s of blacks versus whites. I recently saw a movie, and would not recommend too many movies in a church setting especially. But I recently saw the movie The State of Jones concerning the Civil War. Brian, I don't know if you've seen that or not. A very great movie, I consider. It opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I would highly recommend everyone watch that movie. It helped you today to understand some of the problems we're facing. Well, you would be able to see a lot of things that are twisted in today's world. So you can see that division has always been a problem in our country, and a lot of the problem depends on what is called rights. But a lot of that goes back to opinions that are confused as rights. And a big part of that division in our country is because of political affiliation. And we have two major parties in our country today, and that's the Democrats and the Republicans. And big part of that divide is whether you are a Democrat or a Republican. And that's one reason I say, I don't care which side of the fence you're on, please stay with me today. I'm not trying to put down either one side, because I'm neither one really. I'm what I consider a constitutionalist. A constitutionalist basically believes that the authority of government derives from and is limited by a body of fundamental law. Basically, the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Everything we have as law should go back to those two documents, because those two documents go back to what we are going to be studying today, and that is Exodus 20. That's where we're going to start. We need to go back to a solid foundation, a solid base. And those two documents are based upon what God gave to man as a principle between him and man, and between man and man. And that is a summary of law, what we call the Ten Commandments. And those Ten Commandments, when you look at them, there is no room for opinion. God didn't write those by asking, all right, what do you think I should put here? He didn't write them and say, all right, now that I've written these, if you don't agree with them, you add an amendment or you change them to what you think they should be. He says, this is how I command it to be. And if you notice, he didn't write them on paper, he didn't write them on wood, he didn't write them any other way but on stone. Never to be changed. Let's look at those first 17 verses of Exodus chapter 20. Beginning in verse 1, and God spoke all of these words, saying, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Look, he reminds them, I am God. I am the one that brought you out of the bad place where you were. And then he says, you shall have no other little gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water underneath the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them, for I am the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but serving mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of your God, the Lord your God, in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates. For in the 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, and your days may be long upon the land which the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. And the people witnessed the thunderings, the lightning flashes, the sound of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled and stood afar off. Then they said to Moses, you speak with us, and we will hear. But let not God speak with us, lest we die. They recognized that God was serious, and that God was all-powerful, and he was the one to give the orders. Amen. We got it. We received it. We understood it. And we will do. Just don't let God be the one to bring this down and tell it to us. You be a mediator, the intercessor for us. You talk to us and tell us these things, because God is too powerful for us. And with that, they received a solid rock, the Ten Commandments, the stone written by God's own finger, a summary of law between God and man, the solid base of law with no opinion or room for opinion. And all they had to do was obey the law. The thing about this is, our law, our country, being based upon this by the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, our forefathers began this nation And they gave us this law based upon that. And where we stand today, we have a country that the leaders, many of our leaders today say that this Bill of Rights and this Constitution is a living document. And they want to change it and do away with it completely. Where do they want to go with it? They want to put it on shifting sand. All right, let me step down for a moment. Let me get Ryan's opinion of where I should go with this. Now I'm up to Ryan. Ryan's 2020. Let's get David's opinion in 2022. Let's get Connor's opinion in 2024. Let's get Greg's opinion in 2026. Let's get Randy's opinion in 2014 or 2040, I should say. Where is our country going to be by the time that we get to Maryland in 2060? If we shift our Constitution or our documents to everyone's opinion by the time that we get to 2060, what kind of a country are we going to have that is not built on a solid foundation that we have right now, that is built on what we know as the Constitution, based on a solid foundation right here in Exodus 20? That's what some of our leaders are looking to do. And people in our country do not realize that. We have a great division in our country, folks. We have a great division. And it's a dangerous division. Now let me give you another thought. Let's say that this little center aisle, the center aisle is the dividing line between good and evil. All right, you got me? The center aisle is the dividing line between good and evil. Right here, I'm with Satan. Okay? I'm with Satan. Right here on this side to the right, I'm with God. Now, if you notice something, the closer I get to this line, the line between good and evil, the further I get from God. But Steve, where do I go? I get closer to Satan, don't I? I get closer to Satan. Whichever way that I go with my decision to get closer to the line, I get further from the one that I need to be from, or closer to the one that I don't need to be close to. Our decisions with what we make in our mind leads to our heart, and it goes back to where we need to be on a solid foundation. We need to be making our decisions on our thought process of where we vote on our decisions of what that basis is on. Not just what we think is this. Not just on what we think is this. down at verse 20, or chapter 23. Chapter 23 at verse 20. Justice for all in chapter 23, and in verse 20, it says, "Behold, I send an angel before you to keep you in the way and to bring you to the place which I prepared. Beware of him and obey his voice. Do not provoke him, for he will not pardon your transgressions. For my name is in him, but if you indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and an adversary to your adversaries. For my angel will go before you and bring you into the Amorites and the Hittites and the Perizzites and the Canaanites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, and I will cut them off. You shall not bow down to their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their works. But you shall utterly overthrow them and completely break down their sacred pillars. You shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water. And I will take your sickness away from the midst of you. No one shall suffer miscarriage or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my fear before you. I will cause confusion among all the people to whom you come, and will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send hornets before you, which shall drive out the Hivite, the Canaanite, and the Hittite from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field become too numerous for you. Little by little I will drive them out from before you, until you have increased and you inherit the land. And I will set your bounds from the Red Sea to the sea, Philistia, and from the desert to the river, for I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you." God said, if you follow my ways, God's ways, I will bless you. I will give the land to you, and I will drive your enemies out before you. But then what did he say? If you don't, they will become a snare to you, and things are going to go wrong for you. Things are going to go wrong for you. We know things went wrong. 2020, hindsight. Things went wrong because they did not obey God. Well, guess where we are today, folks? Guess where we are today? We see ourselves in a situation where America started out as a country founded upon the beliefs God was the God. And where are we today? We got all kinds of gods and no God. All kinds of gods and no God. I showed David and some others a video last week of where a court meeting or a council meeting was starting, and they had a man come up and offer what was considered a prayer. He prayed to Thor. He prayed to an atheist God. He mentioned everything, and in his closing to the prayer was, instead of amen, so be it. So be it. There were people walked out of that courtroom right before he started this, whatever you want to call it, prayer or whatever. And I couldn't figure out what they were doing. Once he started, I figured it out real quick.
Brad, they must have known that was coming.
They knew it was coming. They knew who he was and what he was doing. And if you want to see it, I'll find it. I'll find it.
Where was it?
I don't know where it was, Steve. But it was strange.
I thought you didn't watch it.
I don't know. But it was strange. But that's what's happening in America today. And you think there's some reason that we haven't got problems? We need to get back to the basics. Back to a solid foundation. And that's why I'm saying we need to pull together. We need to pull together. He gave them a warning, or he gave them blessings, but he also gave them the warning. And he's told them to be separate. He told them to be separate. In 23 and 32 and 33, look at that once again. 23, 32, and 33. He said, you shall make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. You know what that sounds like? It sounds like in the New Testament, the church, the ecclesia, the called out, separate, called out separate. And that's what we are. You know, David, last week he mentioned the gulf, that God's ways are so separate from our ways that there's a great gulf, a difference between God's ways and ours. Consider this. Everyone has an opinion. But the further we move from the baseline, the further we move from God. And the more opinions we have, the more we come away from the baseline, the further we are from the solid rock. We need to bring it back to the center. And that's what I want to show you right now. I want to show you this in Exodus chapter 25. Look at verse 10. Look at verse 10. God has begun to give them instructions for the tabernacle and for the sanctuary. And in verse 10, he begins to give them instructions for the ark of the testimony that will hold the stone tablets and the rod of Moses, the staff of Moses. And he says in verse 10, and they shall make an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits shall be its length, 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold inside and out, you shall overlay it. And you shall make on it a molding of gold all around. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and you shall put them in its 4 corners. 2 rings shall be one on one side, and 2 rings on the other side. And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. And you shall put the poles into the rings on the sides of the ark, that the ark may be carried by them. The poles shall be in the rings of the ark. They shall not be taken from it. And you shall put them into the ark, the testimony which I will give you. That is, the 10 Commandments. You shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold, of hammered work. You shall make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make one cherub at one end and the other cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherubim at the two ends of it one piece with the mercy seat. And the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings. And they shall face one another. The faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat. You shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony that I will give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I give you in commandment to the children of Israel. Folks, I want you to imagine with me just a moment. I'm getting into David's territory next week. But God is setting up the instructions for his tabernacle and for his camp. He's got 12 tribes of Israel. And he places 4 tribes to the south, 4 tribes to the north, 4 tribes to the east, and 4 tribes to the west. And in the center of those tribes, he places his tabernacle. And in that tabernacle, he places his Holy of Holies. And within that Holy of Holies, he places his ark of the testimony. And upon that ark of the testimony, he has them make this beautiful, beautiful, pure gold mercy seat. And they cover this mercy seat with golden cherubim, with their wings touching above the mercy seat. And he says, this is where I come down and I meet with you. I meet with you. And no one can enter. No one can enter but Aaron and his sons, but once a year. But you know what that is? That's right in the center. Right in the center of all the Israelites. Right in the center of God's people. Where did God want to be? He wanted to be in the center of their lives. Christ's death. That one thing that separated God from the people. That heavy curtain was torn apart. There's no more separating God from the people. God is with the people. It's not here. But guess what? His son, that blood, that body, each week says, I'm here. It says, I'm here. I want to be in the center. and I want to stay there. We need to stay on the basis. We need to stay on a solid base. Our country needs to stay on a solid base. That's why we need Exodus 20 to remind us where we need to stay. We don't follow the Ten Commandments per se any longer. We follow Christ's law. But it reminds us that's a solid base we need to keep in mind. It's a basis for our laws, and we need to keep it there. Questions, comments? Appreciate your attention.